we explain to people there's no AI without PI. There's no AI without process intelligence, at least in the enterprise, or you could say there's no enterprise AI without PI. And that's really resonated with people. They understand that they need to, baseline their processes, change them, and create this repository that AI agents can reason off of to make sure they are precise and they're doing the right things. And they also need this cross-process element because you don't want an AI agent to optimize one thing, but then screw up something else, right? Like imagine you had an AI agent automate all your orders, but then when you sent those customers invoices, it did something wrong and you don't get your money, right? That would be a problem. So you need cross-process intelligence to also follow and compare what the agents are doing.
In this episode, I talked to Alex Rinke, co-founder and co-CEO of Celonis, the world's leading process intelligence company. Alex and his co-founders started Celonis 15 years ago in Munich with just $15,000 and a belief that they could help the world's largest organizations run a lot better and a lot smarter. Today, Celonis works with roughly half of the 200 biggest companies in the world, but the path there was anything but easy. Alex shared the gritty early days of bootstrapping and sending thousands of handwritten letters to potential prospects. We also talked about how the company evolved from its original idea around simulating business processes to pioneering process mining and intelligence, and how Celonis has evolved into what Alex describes as an MRI for the enterprise, giving companies a digital twin of how work actually happens across thousands of disconnected systems. Alex makes a compelling case that there's no enterprise AI without process intelligence, and he explains why companies that try to deploy agents without first understanding their processes are setting themselves up for costly mistakes. We also talked about how Celonis is re-engineering its own internal processes in the AI era, how he's hiring differently, what the co-CEO model looks like in practice, and of course, the AI tools that are transforming how he works. So here it is, our conversation with Alex Rinke of Celonis. All right, so Alex, for those who aren't familiar with Celonis, tell us a little bit about what Celonis does and what your role is with the company.
Yeah, I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Celonis, and Celonis is the world's leading process intelligence company. So we've started 15 years ago, and we've built the world's leading platform to understand and optimize business processes for our clients. So a business process could be customer service, it could be HR, it could be supply chain. There's lots of processes in supply chain. It could be financial processes. And we can go across any environment and understand how this process works today to baseline it, and then use AI to optimize this process to make it faster, make it better for clients, make it more efficient. And this is really becoming very quickly a core platform for our customers to industrialize enterprise AI as they're trying to automate their agents, their processes using agents.
At the end of the day, a lot of that comes down to you're just helping companies run a lot better. And every company in the world is always trying to run better, whether you're one person or you're, 100,000 people or 500,000 people. Like you're always trying to run better. And so the work that you all do is helping companies like always sort of spin that wheel to get better and more efficient and sort of more optimized. Yeah. You've had an interesting journey. You said 15 years.
Yes.
And now sort of we're in this very different sort of moment, which we'll talk some more about. But as I understand it, when you all started, you didn't have a very easy time finding people to believe in the mission and invest in you. So talk to us a little bit about that. How did Celonis get started, and then how did you get to where you had a hard time getting people to invest, and now you have people investing billions, in your company? That's quite a journey.
True. When we started out, I think I was 21, 22. We were just coming out of college, and we wanted to build an enterprise software company targeting Siemens and Bayer Pharmaceuticals, and initially it was in Europe, big European companies, but ultimately the global enterprise which we operate in today. And people didn't believe us back then. The VC infrastructure in Europe was very immature, and people didn't believe us. They sort of at that time believed that So if young founders can start consumer businesses, but they didn't believe that they can start enterprise businesses. And especially what we do, which deals with the largest organizations and some of the most complex challenges, was not something where people said, well, this team can actually do it, right? So we decided to bootstrap for the first years, and it was a very scrappy time. We were sleeping in motels with eight other people that we didn't know. We were, really going from client to client. At one point, we sent out thousands of handwritten letters to people to get their attention. Um, because how often do you get a handwritten letter, right? Not a lot. So we really found our way to work with large enterprise customers. Today we work with roughly half of the 200 biggest companies in the world. A good chunk of the global 2000, and then even if you go to the global 10,000 companies, we have a good chunk of those. So the the company has really been able to work with and convince the biggest, most complex organizations in the world. But obviously that takes time, and it takes, especially if you don't have any capital. We really started with $15,000. Um, it takes a fair bit of grit as well.
So that's like $15,000 is like the minimum in Germany you had to raise, right?
Correct.
To in
Yes.
order to form a business, right? Because you
Yes.
couldn't find anybody to invest, so you sort
Yes.
of scraped together everything you could, you and your co-founders, and sort of
Yeah,
got it going on
I
that.
mean, in many countries you can start a limited corporation, limited liability corporation with $1. In Germany, you needed 12,500 euros, so $15,000 roundabout. And I remember, so each founder needed to put up $5,000, and I didn't have $5,000, so I bought it from my co-founder, who who was a little bit older already. And yeah, so he had worked for a few years, so he had a little bit more money saved up.
Very good. And then, am I remembering this correctly that for the first 5 years you still couldn't get anybody to invest in you all? You were still just trying to find customers and get the thing started.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, at one point, then we had actually quite some substantial traction, and then we didn't really need capital also in the first year, so it shifted a little bit, and then in 2016, so 10 years ago, we decided to really go after the US market and become a global company. And that's when we then decided to go back and really seriously raise money, and then we raised our first round and then some subsequent financing rounds. But the yeah, initially it was tough, and then it wasn't necessary for what we were trying to achieve, and then it was necessary as we tried to scale.
Very good. And when you started, uh, it was really this focus on process mining, right? That was the main idea. Tell us a little bit, like double click on that for a sec for us. Like tell us, what did process mining look like, as you started?
How do three guys wake up in Munich one day and say we want to start a process mining company, right?
Right,
um,
right.
so we were actually, so I was studying math, and my co-founders were computer scientists, and we back then wanted to had this idea that we can build simulation models,
Okay.
which actually ties back to where we are today. Okay,
Mm,
so we wanted to build simulation models where you could take I don't know, customer service desk or a accounting team, or a number of teams, and simulate the process.
okay.
And take the process and simulate. So if you say, hey, what if we change our staffing? What if we automate something? How much faster are we going to get? How much faster can we serve clients? What is sort of the optimal way to do this? And we actually had some success, building a prototype and then approaching first potential clients while we were still studying at university. And the first client was interested and said, yeah, if you could simulate my IT service processes, that would be great. So we came there, and then we sent them a questionnaire, right? Give us all your existing processes, the volumes, how many calls you get that get routed this way versus that way, how many touches you have on average for a ticket, if someone has an issue with the network, what's the process path it follows, how often does it deviate from that path. So things that we wanted to feed into our simulation engine. And we thought it's pretty straightforward because every company knows exactly how their processes are running. And they looked at us and were like, we don't have any of this information. We have some
Mm,
reports, but we don't know exactly how our processes are running. It's complicated. There's,
yeah.
different people do it differently. There's so many different things we support that the process can look very different. There's a lot of variation. And it was really this key insight that organizations have too little visibility into how their processes are running. In large businesses, around 40% of the work happens on desktops outside of systems. Excel sheets, emails,
Mm,
there's this tremendous amount of complexity. You look at
yeah.
a typical like ERP process, like handling orders and invoices, for example. When we look at it now, we often see this tens of thousands of variations on how they do one process. It's crazy, right? It's very, very complicated. So,
Yeah.
so what we found out is that the visibility was missing. So then we found out about process mining, which was back then a research concept, but there was no practical adoption in businesses, and there was very little tooling available. So we said, well, before we start this whole simulation thing, maybe we should just start the ultimate process X-ray company, where everybody can get an X-ray of any process in their company and understand exactly how it works, how it can be improved, where the bottlenecks are, where they spend too much time, money, effort, risk to do things. And that was turned out to become a real success. We've obviously built around that, and we can talk about how our platform has evolved. But the initial problem was we wanted to power models, simulation models in our case, and didn't have the right context.
Now it's time for a word from this week's sponsor, Deel. Have you ever loved your HR, IT, or payroll software? Yeah, didn't think so. Me neither. Most platforms are stitched together, so when they add AI, there's not much it can do. Deel rebuilt the entire global workforce stack from the foundation up. One AI native platform for HR, IT, and payroll. Built in-house, not white labeled. And because it's one system, AI inside Deel can actually do real work. It manages onboarding, payroll, compliance, and approvals, following your policies, workflows, and risk thresholds. You can hire, manage, and pay anyone, anywhere, without juggling tools, logins, or manual handoffs. AI agents take care of the repetitive work, while over 2,000 local experts in 130 countries keep everything compliant. From 5 people to 50,000, Deel scales as you grow. It just works, and you'll actually like using it. We use it here at the Deep View so we can confirm how good it is. See how global work runs when AI is built into the system. Book a demo at del.com/deepview. That's del.com/deepview. We thank Deel for their support of the Deep View. And now, back to the show. Wow. Okay, so this makes me think, Alex, in these enterprises, often these systems are islands unto themselves. They're very siloed, and the systems become very siloed. And so because of the systems, then the sort of people end up being siloed, the people focused on those different systems. So I have to imagine that as you're doing this, one of the challenges, you're doing process mining and process intelligence, as you often refer to it now, that becomes one of the biggest challenges. What does that look like in the context of all of the work that you are trying to do to provide this visibility?
Well, over the years, and with AI, this is even accelerating further. We got really, really good at that, right? So we can connect
Mm,
to any environment. I mean, we have customers connecting us up to mainframes. We
wow.
can connect to the desktops, the non-system work, to find out everything that happens outside of the system. So we can really get a comprehensive digital twin of what's happening in the company. And now we can even join up. So we launched this latest evolution of our platform a couple of years ago called the Process Intelligence Graph.
Okay.
And I would say the latest foundation. The platform has evolved a lot since then. It's evolving very rapidly right now, as you can imagine. But this process intelligence graph is really the ability to represent multiple interconnected processes. So often you have a customer service process, but it's related to onboarding, right? You can't service a customer you haven't onboarded. If there's an issue in onboarding, that might create a service issue down the road, a product activation, customer complaints, or for example, in a supply chain context, ordering, shipping, buying, making things, storing things, all these things are connected processes. So we can represent interconnected processes across systems and data domains today in a way that's really, really powerful and unique. So we can, the key thing is I think you're right. It's very complex. It's very siloed. There's a lot of variations. The reason there's so many variations is the systems are very rigid often,
Yeah.
the way they were implemented, right? So they're like train tracks, right? It's hard to go outside of the train track. So some folks you want to get back on the train tracks, but sometimes you also need some tracks, to do the last mile, or maybe because something changed, or you want to go a slightly different way. So people are building a lot of customization, they're building a lot of workarounds, and we can really, really help our customers with that by, in the first instance, provide like really switching the MRI on, right? It's not even an X-ray, it's an MRI where it shows
Okay.
everything that's going on, and where the issues are. It's very powerful. And again, as you said, it's very complex. Our core strength is that we're able to deal with that complexity.
I have to think that that's one of the main reasons companies want to work with Celonis is that,
Yes,
getting these things, making them talk to each other or seeing them, all the visibility and sort of one, vision is really challenging. I mean, it's one of the reasons that this whole idea of like, tech business alignment has been sort of hanging out there for so long because it becomes very difficult. And then when your data is locked in certain systems, when you have systems that don't necessarily talk to each other, or they contextualize even parts of your business in different ways, it gets really challenging to have like. I'm sure you hear this all the time, but I hear it from enterprises of like one version of the truth. I look at one system and it tells me one thing. I look at another system, it tells me something else. And so, am I understanding it correctly that part of the founding thesis and the thesis that you're still working on is like being able to be able to have that level of visibility and insight into these systems broadly, sort of disconnected from whatever the sort of mental models that are associated with the software itself, is what companies are so excited about with sort of
yes,
working with you guys.
exactly. And I think then, um, and then we also can now encode how you want your process to work. So the design, right?
Okay.
And we can actually help you put it into action. And how you do that is depends a little bit on the scenario, right? Either you want to maybe put in a new system, we can help with that and accelerate that. Maybe you want to bring AI agents in if you're already on a modern system, but you still have this problem, right? You want to bring AI agents in to help you execute. You want to recompose a function. So we have many different ways in how we can also power the operationalization of this. And one is with AI agents, right? Like if you want to have an AI agent automate a process for you, you need to feed that agent the context of how the process is working. And you might need to also want to feed them how you want it to work, which might not be how it is working. And then you need to monitor what the AI agent is doing to the process. So our process observability, which now is real time and cross process,
Okay.
becomes really, really important as you have more and more AI agents deployed to actually see how the process is evolving and make sure you have the guardrails in place and you can actually explain what's going on.
Very good. You're taking the questions right out of my mouth. I was going to get to there with the with AI agents and this observability, and because agents go off and they do things and you're not always sure what they're doing or how, and so that's become one of the challenges that a number of companies are trying to face. So that's great that that's sort of already part of your thinking. So how did the company evolve from really focused on this idea of process mining, process intelligence, to when the AI boom happened? Obviously, you all predated the sort of current AI boom by nearly a decade, over a decade, and so when all of the current sort of generative AI explosion happened, how did you look at that and decide what that meant for you all and for the work that you do?
Yeah, it's very clear from the beginning that it's very exciting. And the reason it's so exciting is because to implement AI in a company, you need to change all the processes,
Okay.
right? If you don't change your processes to actually leverage AI, you're not going to take the advantage and you're not going to get the benefit, right? So we have a customer, a big utility, Uniper. They've created millions and millions of savings across 27 processes. One example is, they are utilities, so they maintain a lot of equipment. They have to, they have a maintenance agent coordinating and orchestrating all the maintenance that they do around their equipment. And we have process intelligence feeding that agent because you needed to really understand in the different regions, in the different settings, how is that maintenance being triggered, executed, what guardrails are around it. So we could provide that insight very, very quickly with a high degree of precision, had them to adjust that process and then feed it into the AI and then also monitor the AI to make sure it's doing the right thing. So process intelligence, it was very clear that it is an essential context layer for artificial intelligence because you need to ground the artificial intelligence in the processes of that respective business. So as sort of process nerds and process engineers, we understood that very quickly, that there was a very significant amount of process transformation associated to actually making these models save customers money and work in an enterprise reality. And I think we're in the midst of that. I think we're in the early stages of that. A lot of companies haven't substantially automated their processes yet. Maybe they've automated code generation quite a bit. Maybe they've automated parts of customer service. But if you're talking back office, supply chain, front office, really complex operations, it's the very beginning.
I'm glad you mentioned supply chains because that is one of the world's most complicated processes. And so I have to think that a number of your customers or the customers that are most maybe enthusiastic about what you do tend to be people that have very complicated supply chains. Because if you can optimize those processes, you can save tons of money. You can make it more efficient. You can make it faster. All of those kinds of things. And we've come through an era where we had a lot of supply chain disruption during the COVID era. Now we've sort of hit another gear with some of the geopolitical challenges of supply chain disruptions happening again and anticipations of others. The AI boom itself is in some ways constrained by some supply chain challenges. So with all of that in mind, I have to think that supply chain is some of the people that come to you wanting help with processes because that matters a lot for those folks.
100%. I mean, we work, you mentioned oil and gas, we work already with 4 of the top 5 oil and gas players, as an example. We work with many of the top life science players, many of the top OEMs. Mercedes is going really, really big across their processes. They have over 30 different key production plants where they have to optimize the supply chain. And as I mentioned, our ability to, incorporate AI deeply into what we do, to speed up understanding the processes even better, to speed up bringing together disparate data sources, to speed up understanding, really generating insights from all this information that we gather. So that really helps us. And the other thing, the ability to represent these interconnected processes really, really created a hockey stick of our growth in supply chain related use cases. Because supply chain related use case, you always need those multiple processes in combination. A single process view, which is where we started, is not enough for a supply chain use case. You need to sync up procurement with demand, with order management, with delivery, with inventory, with manufacturing, depending on the industry. You need to link all of those things up and in order to generate meaningful outputs.
If I'm using your product, in my business, which part of the, who in the company is using it the most? Is it the tech team, IT? Is it operations? Is it, who are there certain parts of the company that tend to be most, big users?
In the past, I would say it's been very line of business driven.
Okay.
What we see more and more though is that, and it's really, we actually just have a big meeting going on with a lot of CIOs that use Celonis. The CIOs really embraced it in the last few years because they understand it's a horizontal platform capability. You have processes everywhere. You need process intelligence everywhere to enable artificial intelligence everywhere. Or you want to agentify everything in your business. And in order to do that, you need end-to-end process intelligence. It's necessary to have the right context and to do it in a high quality and right way, right? Because the quality and precision and guardrails and how effectively you can deploy AI into your business is going to be the competitive advantage. It's too slow right now still for many companies. And our customers are accelerating, right? Our customers are doing it, putting it in production. We're not talking about pilots, we're talking about production rollouts, and they're transforming very substantial parts of their operations at a speed that is unrecognizable to what we would have assumed a few years ago. So maybe even a few months ago. I mean, even with the recent model evolution, we've already incorporated that into our product to speed up implementation dramatically, as an example. So you really see that AI is affecting every single process, and process intelligence is a foundation to industrialize it.
When the AI boom happened, was that when you changed the name of what you do from process mining to process intelligence to help people understand that this is a layer of context? AI is very data hungry. AI is very context hungry. And what I hear you saying is like, you realize very quickly, like we have very valuable data that can help guide AI and now AI agents, in ways that are going to be, incredibly useful and precise in working with these things.
100% yes. I think it was correct, yes. And we changed to process intelligence, but also because it expanded a lot, right? We do process
Okay.
predictions, we do cross process, we do task, combine task and process. So it goes beyond process mining, and it has for a while. The other thing is we explain to people there's no AI without PI. There's no AI without process intelligence,
Sure.
at least in the enterprise, right? You could say there's no enterprise AI without PI. And that's really resonated with people.
Okay.
They understand that. They understand that they need to, baseline their processes, change them, and create this repository that AI agents can reason off of, to make sure they are precise and they're doing the right things. And they also need this cross-process element, because you don't want an AI agent to optimize one thing, but then screw up something else, right? Like
Yeah.
imagine you had an AI agent automate all your orders, but then when you send those customers invoices, it did something wrong, and you don't get your money, right? That would be a problem.
Yeah.
So you need cross-process intelligence to also follow and compare what the agents are doing.
What you're doing is process intelligence, putting this process intelligence layer into a company when they
Yes,
implement, Celonis.
yes.
Is it reconceptualizing, or is it like a new mental model for thinking about your business through the lens of processes rather than through the lens of systems or lines of action or that kind of thing? Is it another lens, or is it even sort of reimagining sort of your business from the ground up through the lens of
Yeah, I
process
think
and
the
processes?
unit that really powers agentic automation is the process,
Okay.
right? Because that's what you ultimately drives the outcome. So I think it is a different lens. I think we are unique in the sense that we look at a business as a collection of interacting processes. And I think it's the right mental model for AI, because the atomic unit of an agent is really a process, right?
Yeah, the agents, you want them to accomplish things for you. Ultimately, at
Correct,
the end of the day, a chat bot is trying to provide you with information
correct.
or context, and an agent is trying to carry out tasks and processes for
Correct.
you.
And they need to be chained together in a logical way. So then you have a process, right?
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, well, Alex, I'd like to ask you a little bit about how has your role evolved when from
Mhm.
founding, through the journey of these sort of 15 years. How has your role evolved in the company? What does it look like? What did it look like at the beginning to compared to what it looks like now?
Yeah. So I think it actually evolves quite substantially. In the beginning, you are doing everything, right? Because there's only three people. Uh, then uh, I think as the company grows, you have to learn how to take on managerial responsibility. And by the way, a lot of founders at one point, um, it's challenging, right? And not
Yeah.
everybody likes that evolution or embraces that. Um, so you need to go from running a three-person organization to a few hundred people, and then ultimately a few thousand people, and then you really need to become an executive. So I always say there's founder, there's leader, and then there's executive. And you always want to keep that founder mindset, right? That doesn't go away.
Sure.
But you also need to have that other persona that you need to learn. And for example, an executive needs to build and align an executive team, and it's very different from running a few hundred people where everybody knows each other, and sort of through gossip, the word gets out. I like to talk about this analogy of the founder microphone. So when the company is small, you have this microphone and you say something into the microphone and it happens, someone picks it up and it works. And then when the company gets bigger, you're like mic test, 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 like your microphone,
Mike's
it
not
doesn't
working.
work anymore, right? And then you need to really learn how to create a management system and an executive team and align everybody around common objectives. Um, Now I think it's changing again a little bit, where I think that original founder persona is more important because we are looking at such a significant transformation
Mm.
of how organizations work internally, of how your products work, of how you're building your products, of how you think about engineering. So I would say what founders are usually good at is they're creative, they have strong convictions, right? They don't easily get um, sort of thrown off the path that they want to be on. And I think some of this comes back, and obviously you apply it differently to an organization of a few thousand versus an organization of a few people. But I think it's changing again.
What do you spend your time on? What do you spend your days on? These days, what stuff takes up the most, mental bandwidth for you, or mental tokens, as people like to call it these days?
Mental thinking, and this hasn't changed. I'm always thinking about three things: our customers, our products, and our people, our team. Right? Those three things have to are the key sort of things that make the company better, right? If you have a great team, they're all aligned, they're marching in the right direction. If the great organization, if you have great products that really resonate with your customers are happy with the service and the value they're getting, right? If you do those three things well, that's sort of always been my focus. And I think each one of those dimensions changes in the AI era, right?
Okay.
Our products change significantly. The way we approach our customers and the message and the way we engage changes quite dramatically. And also our internal organization evolves very dramatically. So I'm thinking of those three things, but really in an AI first way, and and leveraging our unique strength to amplify the impact of AI on our products, on our customers, and on our organization is really, really exciting. So it hasn't been as exciting it's probably the most exciting time, maybe since we started the company right now. It feels almost like a refounding moment.
I'm hearing that a lot from folks. So many things are evolving, the way that they run the company and the way that they operate. How about your team internally using AI? How are you all using AI internally to transform what you do, to sort of rethink things, and to
Yeah.
sort of help you take the next step?
And it's very interesting because you have this same challenge that our customers have, that you give broad access to AI to your company, but then you have to speed up all the processes so that people actually get faster and things actually get done better, right?
Mm,
So I give you an example. One focus is obviously coding and engineering, right? So
yeah.
everybody has access. Everybody's using, pretty much everybody at Celonis is using AI in one shape or form every day, right? So
Okay.
we have broad adoption, but now we have to re-engineer the processes. So, for example, in engineering, you used to have a very different model, right? The way we do engineering now is that we get an empowered decision maker with a few people in a room working on complex problems, producing outcomes every single day, and launching products much, much faster. Because what we found is with coding agents, you can produce code much faster. But now you also need to create the infrastructure and the process to make decisions much quicker, to launch products much quicker, to speed
Mm,
everything up, right? So it's really been, and we use Celonis a lot internally to understand where those bottlenecks are and how we can tackle them. So, for example, in software engineering, it was speed of specification and decision making needed to be dramatically accelerated, and the organizational model needs to evolve to be able to do that at scale. We are looking at how we deliver our product, right? Like we can automate um, implementing Celonis with AI, which means that our customer, when they used to be able to do, I don't know, three processes in a time frame, they can now do 30, right? They can go across all of their systems. They can get insights across everything that they do. They can get end-to-end process intelligence, which, one of our customers, I spoke to them 2 weeks ago, they're a large bank. They have 4,000 systems, Jason, just in their markets. 4,000. So how do you get all this process intelligence across 4,000 systems? Well, in the past, we would have said, hey, show us which ones are your most important ones and we can focus on those. Now we can say, let's go. So it's a completely different way on how we implement, how we build products, but then also all the other operational processes in the company. So I think in those three buckets, how we build products, how we implement those products, and then the third is um, how we roll it out in the organization across HR, across finance, across go to market. How do we in AI enable and agentify everything? And I think the first step is you give everybody access and you get that sort of momentum going across knowledge work. In parallel, you then need to really work on your end-to-end processes and speed them up and re-engineer them so they can actually take advantage of this AI speed.
What's the hardest thing about implementing AI, within the company today? And what's the thing that sort of you wish could be moving a lot faster?
Well, I think that process transformation and cultural transformation are the biggest bottlenecks.
Okay.
So process transformation is because of all the things we talked about. Context is spread. You have to make sure it's inserted in the right parts of the process. You have to make sure you remove other bottlenecks. You have to make sure that you really reinvent, right? How do we want to do customer service? How do we want to do sales? How do we want to go to market? So there is a significant part in process transformation. And then secondly, you need to bring people along on this mission, right? Obviously, there's going to be some resistance. I mean, the good thing is Celonis, we're still a pretty young company, and it's a technology native company. So our team is very receptive to it and excited about it. But still, you need to bring people along, right? Some organizational structures have to evolve. You have different organizational models, and some of this is also something that's changing because AI is progressing pretty rapidly. So you thought it couldn't do something 3 weeks ago, and today you're like, oh, they can actually do it.
Now it does.
So
Yeah.
you're just one model iteration away from it being able to do it. So I mean, people are still tremendously valuable. Don't get me wrong, right? I'm not one of those folks that say, "Hey, you don't need people anymore. You can just have AI run your company." I think the question is how do you get much, much more leverage out of the people, and how do you get much, much more leverage out of the organization? How do you get much, much more leverage out of the process? And that requires significant change.
How are you hiring differently based on sort of all the changes that have happened and are happening? What does that look like for you? Are you still hiring entry level jobs? This is one of the big things, right? That's hanging out there. Like the entry level jobs are one of the first things that have been automated. How do you all think about it? How many? I think you have about, if I'm remembering right, about 4,000 employees today.
Yeah, close to for that.
Okay. And so you have a fairly large team. Yeah. What does it look like as you're thinking about the people that you bring on board from this point forward?
We are obviously incorporating AI into our hiring. We are testing a lot for how versatile people are, right? You really need people that are versatile. Secondly, you need people that are able to go deep into certain areas because that depth is ultimately, if you pair it with AI, what gets the real acceleration, right? Like we see, for example, in our engineering organization, some of our deepest engineers that are the most creative, most knowledgeable get the largest lift, right? Because then you turn a 10x engineer into a 50x engineer, a 100x engineer.
Yeah.
So we really test for those abilities, and we're changing the way we're approaching interviewing. We always do a challenge in our interviewing process, so we've changed all those challenges to incorporate AI, and we ask a lot of questions around the cultural attitude of people because that matters a lot when you're in a time where things change so rapidly, right? Are they intellectually honest? Are they curious, right? Curiosity is super, super important. Are they willing to change, to evolve? Are they not stuck in their ways, right? And I think that can come both in entry level and more experienced positions. Clearly, we are not just thinking about, hey, which people do we not need anymore? We are thinking a lot more about there is so much growth for us and so much opportunity ahead. How can we get 10x leverage out of people, right? Because there's a lot of processes there where process intelligence is very meaningful. We see a tremendous amount of demand because everybody wants to agentify their operations and their processes. So we are quite excited to use this time to play offense.
As you think about the future, if you think about sort of the next stage of things, we're in this very much agentic moment in 2026, and there's a lot that's happening there. But we know that, and we see the progress, the pace of change and new models and new tools. As you think forward, for Celonis and for the industry, what are you most excited about? What are you most looking forward to? What are the things that or maybe even a little bit anxious about in terms of the future of AI and tech?
Well, I think process intelligence is something very hard, and transforming processes is very hard, right? It's not something that's easy. And I think with AI, it can get much, much faster and much, much better because we have those reasoning capabilities available, right? That help us in every step of what process intelligence and process transformation does. And it really amplifies the category because where it used to be for people that really wanted to be excellent at processes and that had a focus on this, now everybody has a focus, right? You hear everybody talking about processes, and we're like, yeah, we agree. We have for a while. So I think it's a tremendous opportunity for the space, and it's a tremendous opportunity for Celonis. I think what I'm worried about is what every CEO is worried about is how do we make sure we move fast, right? And we are moving very fast right now. We are moving faster than we've ever moved, and I think that's really the key, right? You need to adapt, you need to move fast, and you need to take advantage of the opportunities out there.
How about the co-CEO role? You are the co-CEO. It's not a very common arrangement, right, to have multiple CEOs. How does it work for you all? How do you divvy up some of the work, decide who focuses on what, and how well
Yeah.
has it worked for
So
you all?
I've always been more focused on the US market and product, and Basti is more focused on the other markets and also more on the operations of the company. Obviously, as we've evolved, as we've grown our executive team, that's always shifted around a little bit. Now it's a huge blessing because we can divide and conquer so well. We've known each other for 15 years. It's not one of those things where, oh, actually longer than 15 years, almost 20. It's not one of these things where you have like two professional executives that didn't know each other that come into a company and everybody wants to be sole CEO, right? That's not
Yeah.
our model. Our model is we've been friends for a long time. We have a president as well who's very, very good. And we really divide and conquer. And it's a blessing now because so many things are changing that you have that ability to divide and conquer. And for example, I have the ability to work much closer with our product teams on the next evolution, which is going to be very exciting. Really deeply, um, um, obviously deeply incorporating AI and combining what we do with the model capabilities out there even better, right, than we do it today. I mean, those things are extremely important, and having multiple founders to be able to divide and conquer, I think, is a blessing. And our third founder, our CTO, he's fully involved. So we all three of us have been fully involved for the whole time.
So it's like double or triple the bandwidth of just what one
Yeah,
executive
that's
might
how I
have.
look at it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. No, it's impressive that you've made it work so well, for sure. All right, I have a question for you. That staying on the topic of leadership, one of the things in the AI era that I hear again and again from leaders is like having to really be thoughtful about their time and having to get leaders often express it as like, how do I get maximum leverage? How do I spend my time on the things that have the biggest impact? And so I love to ask leaders sort of what your tip is for that. How do you find the things that you can get maximum leverage spending your time on?
I always think about where do we want to be in 6 months from now, and 12 months from now, and 2 years from now, and what needs to happen for that to be true, and how can I lean into the things where I can really provide a unique perspective, a unique difference. So right now, for example, again, I'm working very, very closely with, probably as closer than in a long time, with our product and engineering teams, and it's a lot of fun. And you can move things so much faster because of coding agents. I'm using coding agents every day, and it's exciting, right? It's so much fun. You can move things better, and I think it's what used to be true is even more true, that you really need to focus and pick your battles and make sure that you have a strong organization to cover all the bases, right? And you empower the right people to get the collective job done and accomplish the collective mission. I think you have to be even more alert and even more focused than ever because things are moving faster than ever, and the opportunity is huge.
Can I ask you what coding agents, what coding tools do you use?
All of the above, right? I mean, recently Claude has really made a big progress, but Codex is great. I mean, we use all of the above, um, and again, I'm also experimenting with lots of things, right? I always want to stay at the cutting edge. The tool that recently is not a coding agent, but that's really cool is Whisperflow. I don't know if you've tried it,
Oh
but it's a
yeah.
transcription. It's super cool. So that is, I type pretty fast, but now just Whisperflowing it is even faster.
That's amazing. I was going to ask you last thing I usually ask is what's the coding tool, or sorry, not coding tool, but the AI tool you've been using lately that really has made a difference for you? Whisperflow. Are there any others that you've been using lately that you
I've
really
been
like?
using Celonis a lot more with our latest evolution, which is really, really cool, to help drive this process transformation internally. Um, I mentioned the coding agents. Yeah, I think the ability for me, which I think, I'm effectively like a very product oriented founder and CEO, the ability for me to sketch out new ideas and architectures and product capabilities and just actually make them work for then obviously the engineers to incorporate them into our platform and really be specific about the ideas and iterate has been amazing. I mean, it's game changing. So that's been the biggest accelerator for me. Where we used to, spend more time on alignment and then spend a bunch more time in actually making producing the features, we can be so much faster.
Well, Alex, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate you being here. This has been a great conversation, and yeah, good luck with all the things that you're
Jason,
working
this
on.
was fun. Appreciate it. Thank you. Talk soon.
Thank you.